Supreme Court, as Lauren said, upholds affirmative action in the case against the University of Texas.
Abigail Fisher is a white woman who sued the university back in 2008 after she says her application was denied based on her race. The Supreme Court voted 4-3 today in favor of upholding the decision. Supporters of affirmative action argue it's necessary to ensure diversity.
We believe that all students benefit from a diverse learning environment. We also were encouraged by the language in the case that spoke to the discretion of the university in making these kinds of admissions decisions.
Opponents say affirmative action creates reverse discrimination. Some states, including Texas, have replaced their affirmative action plans with percentage plans that guarantee the state's top 10% of high school graduates a spot in any of their state schools in Texas.
Yes.
And with more on this controversial Supreme Court decision concerning affirmative action, we're joined today by Doctor of Law at the University of Texas, Vikas Bajaj. Thank you for being here today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
Advocates had feared that the court might rule that there was no longer a place for affirmative action, but as we saw, 4-3, they upheld it. Kind of a surprise. It was a surprise today. Explain that.
Well, it's a surprise for many reasons. Number one, it's a hot topic. Number two, we have a vacancy on the court, on the bench, with Justice Scalia passing away in February. Interestingly enough, he heard argument in regards to this case in December of last year. But it's a very interesting decision because Justice Kennedy was the one who actually authored the majority opinion. And he has been historically very critical of affirmative action programs. But in the end, the reason why this is such a big decision for all communities, not only in Texas or University of Texas system, but throughout the country, is because it reestablishes the adage that states can do what they wish. So if a state, for instance, decides to adopt affirmative action as a program that they feel as a voting public is an important virtue to follow, well, then you have to follow certain rules. And in this case, the court found that the University of Texas indeed followed those rules. In California, of course, we're probably worried or maybe intrigued as to what the impact may be here. Proposition 209 passed in 1996 in California, which essentially abolished affirmative action in our government-funded institutions, which would include the University of California system.
Now, this ruling, is it all about creating a diverse student body? Is that what the whole point is here?
Well, it has to assert or further an educational goal. That is one of the requirements that is passed down from precedents on this topic. So you have to achieve an educational goal. And then also in conjunction with that, you cannot have, or you must have an absence of a race-neutral program that still accomplishes that educational goal.
What about opponents of affirmative action who say it really amounts to reverse discrimination?
There are strong arguments both ways. At the end of the day, it really comes down to diversity. Do you, as an individual, a voting individual, or does the Supreme Court of the United States, as individual justices, believe in diversity, either forced diversity or unforced diversity, or not? Is it a meritocracy? Do you believe that simply it's your GPA and your admission score on standardized tests that should determine your admission? Or do you believe that there should be other factors?
Like economic factors.
Socioeconomic factors. And the University of Texas sort of looks at the remaining 25% of the applicants that are not brought in by the 75%, which are created by the top 10% of the high school students, as you just described. And that's really what we're talking about, that remaining 25%. Should the holistic goals or holistic measures, as University of Texas has sort of coined that phrase in this case, should those be allowed even to be looked at or considered? Now, Texas has said, we believe in affirmative action. We believe that's a goal. And that's really up to the legislators and the voters. Here in California, of course, as I had alluded to, in 1996, the voters said, no go for California.
Right. Somewhat complicated issue, but thank you for coming in to help us understand it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks so much.